Hi, welcome to Strength Reversed. It's Amy. Thank you so much for being here today. I am doing a VR on having a tarot deck collection. And this is a VR that was started by Imogen at Sapling Tarot, and I found it via Julie at Peekaboo Rose and Calyx at Moxie Journal. So I've watched a few people's responses, but I haven't sat down and planned my own, so I'm flying by the seat of my pants. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, I thought you weren't talking about tarot decks in 2026. Because we're not talking about individual decks, I feel like I'm going to allow it. I love a good question and answer VR, so here we go. The first question, I might have to wear glasses. How long have you been collecting decks? I don't collect decks. I have a collection, I guess, just only in the sense that I have a bunch of decks, but I don't intentionally go out searching for decks to add to the collection. I would love to be done. I would love to never find another deck that speaks to me, because I got plenty right here that are just sitting here taking up space. How long? Well, I've been reading tarot since the late 1900s, and back in the day, I think Calyx was talking about like Barnes and Noble and how you could go through the sample decks there. But other than that, and even that was a few years into my tarot journey. Before that, you had to go to some witchy store and they'd have only a couple of decks and it was like the same decks everywhere. And that's how I got into Robinwood, because I really didn't like the traditional Rider-Waite. I just didn't like the colors and I didn't think it was pretty. So I found Robinwood. What kind of collection do you have? I would say I have an eclectic collection. My taste in tarot decks is I like colorful, I like bold, I like dramatic, maybe a little dark. And so most of them are that to a certain extent, but I don't have any sort of like minimal, no. Utilitarian, I wish it was only decks that I used and used and used, but you know, it's the same few decks that I reach for over and over. Are you a completionist? Absolutely. And that's a problem that I acknowledge. This is why I can't get is it like Seasons of the Witch? Because if I can't get, I don't like all 4 seasons, so I get nothing. Because it would bother me to have one season on the shelf and not the other 3 seasons. It's all or it's nothing. There are a couple of decks that I think have like, something about the dark and something about the light, or I don't know. Isn't there a deck like that where there are 2 versions of it? I can't have either because I only like one of them, but I have to have the whole set. Otherwise, it really bothers me. Okay. You're not weird, Amy. How do you store or organize your collection? Well, I have shelves here. And then there's some in boxes on the bookshelves. The ones on here, some of them are in boxes, but most of them are out. And I will show you what I have. These I found, this was light blue, you can tell, and I got it at Ross for $3.99. I have several of these, and that's what are on these shelves. But this is what it looks like, and you can see kind of the blue in there. And it was in the bathroom organization section, and I just spray painted them gold. And so I have decks sitting in here, and that's what you see sitting on those shelves. So that's how I organize my collection. I do have some decks that I really don't use that I just keep for like a Thoth tarot. I have a Marseille style tarot that I got when I was abroad in Venezuela years ago when I was studying, and those I don't use at all, and so they're in a box like in the closet. But that's how I store them, how I organize them. When I take them out for a spin, when they're out in the wild, I have a bunch of bags that I'll pop the deck into. What is my favorite thing about my collection? Oh gosh, I mean, they're tarot cards. Do I have to have a favorite thing? I love just the way they look. I love to look through decks. I love to reset a deck. I love to kind of daydream as I'm looking through a deck. So my favorite thing, they're just comforting. It's comforting. They're like old friends. What is my least favorite thing about or something to improve my collection? I'm not looking to improve my collection or broaden it, but I wish I used a lot of the decks more often than I do. What is the biggest category of your collection? I think the biggest category for sure is Rider Waite and all of the versions of that. I have one of these, a couple of these that are just all Rider Waite, but I have like holographic, and I have, Radiant Wise Spirit, and I have a bunch of different ones. So that for sure. The smallest category of my collection would be Oracle decks. I'm not an Oracle person. I have a few and that's it. Do I have a Holy Grail? I have a Grand Dame, and that's the Robin Wood. I wouldn't consider it a Holy Grail because it wasn't anything that it wasn't that one deck that I searched for and finally found, and there is no deck. Maybe the Hello Kitty Tarot with the funny death card. There are a bunch of other kinds of Hello Kitty tarots, but that really old one from like the 80s, I don't think I'd use it though. So even that's not a Holy Grail. So no, there's no Holy Grail in my collection. Do you ever wish your collection was bigger, smaller, or is it complete? It's always complete, even when it's growing. Do I wish it was smaller? Not really, because I like all of the decks that I have, and so I'm happy with it. I do not wish it was bigger, though, for sure. How often do you declutter your collection? It's an ongoing process. I usually don't get rid of a whole bunch of decks. I do have 3 decks on the bottom shelf here of my, you cannot see the bottom shelf, but a couple shelves down, I have a couple of decks that I'm just not into, and I just haven't gotten around to getting rid of yet. And there you go. My deck collection doesn't involve a whole, I'm very intentional, except for gifts. I'm very intentional about the decks that I bring in, and so there's not very much going out. And I do keep that in mind too when I think that's a pretty deck. I love that. You gotta let it percolate for months and months and a year. And if it's still the best deck you've ever seen, then get it. Let's see. Do you ever get envious seeing other people's collections? I do not. I do not. Because to me, there's nothing sadder than a bunch of decks that are sitting around not getting used. And a lot of decks I don't care for. Like, there have been so many decks that are all the rage and people just rave about them, and they're not for me. And so, no, I do not get envious of other people's collections. I'm envious, though, when people use them a lot. Use different decks a lot. Not envious, really, but I admire that. Who on YouTube has the best collection videos? As I'm making this collection video, I don't watch collection videos. So I'm not someone who watches a lot of deck walkthroughs or my top 5 decks for like 2025 or whatever. How many times can I mention that I love Robin Wood? It's my, favorite deck, or that I really love this and really love that. What's some advice you'd give to a future new deck collector? Here's the advice that I would give. You are never going to find a deck that is plug and play. You're never going to find a deck that you take out of the box and you don't need to study cards anymore because they just speak to you. You're going to have to study either way, and more is, less is more, I would say. Less is more. We only really need one deck. You can do everything you need with one deck. Having lots of different flavors of tarot decks is just fun. It's just the icing on the cake. So I would say to a newer deck collector, what are you hoping to accomplish by having that deck? You can look through it. You can watch a video if you think the images are really pretty, but if you're not going to use it, it kind of takes a little bit of your energy just sitting on the shelf, and it's not going to make you a better reader by having a certain deck. Someone in one of their videos was talking about rescuing, what deck would you rescue out of a burning building? And I've already thought about that. I already have my plans. I would get my kit out, and then I'm going to rescue pictures that are irreplaceable, photographs. And I got to pick robin wood. And the reason is, and this kind of goes with my advice, I love, for example, the Titanic Tarot. I love light seers, but I can replace those. My robin wood has been with me every single place I've ever gone. Every time I've been on a plane, every time I've been away from home, it's just had so much more. There's just so much of my energy in it. That's the one I would keep. Like, that's the one that's really special to me. The other ones are cool, but they're all easily replaceable, and my robin wood isn't. I also have contingency plans for my journals and, my jewelry, like which jewelry am I taking, kind of a thing. So anyway, I'm a warrior, so I have all the plans. But thank you, Imogen, for this, VR. What am I trying to say? I'm gonna go eat some food. I'm feeling a little bit wonky. Okay, bye.